Here are the biggest gaming leaks and news you've probably missed this week. So, have you ever wondered why regulators keep talking about PlayStation and Xbox, but barely mention Nintendo? I mean, Nintendo is huge, right? But when agencies like the FTC in the US and the CMA in the UK were digging into Microsoft's $68.7 billion Activision buyout, they decided to leave Nintendo out of the conversation. Why? Well, part of it is just simplifying things. They created this thing called the high-performance console market, and guess what? The FTC straight up decided that only PlayStation and Xbox fit that category, leaving Nintendo on the sidelines. Why? Because they see PlayStation and Xbox as more direct competitors. And honestly, that kind of makes sense when you look at how these companies run their businesses. Sony and Microsoft both make a ton of money off microtransactions, online services, and multi-game subscriptions like PlayStation Plus and Game Pass. They also rely heavily on third-party games, while Nintendo, they're in their own world, making most of their money from first-party hits like Mario and Zelda. And then there's hardware. PlayStation and Xbox are going for high-powered gaming machines, while Nintendo is doing its own thing with the Switch, a console handheld hybrid that isn't really competing on the same level. That's why the FTC left them out of this so-called high-performance club. But here's the thing, Nintendo is still a massive player in gaming. Leaving them out of these regulatory discussions kinda shifts the whole conversation about competition. If we start defining markets this way, does it change how we think about gaming companies going forward? What do you think? Should Nintendo be grouped with PlayStation and Xbox, or do they really belong in their own lane? This month's PS Plus Essential lineup comes with some big news. Sony is slowly shifting its focus away from PS4 games. Up until now, the service has always included PlayStation 4 titles alongside PlayStation 5 games, but starting in 2026, expect a bigger emphasis on PlayStation 5 exclusives. That said, there are still plenty of PS4 games coming, and this month is no different. For February, all PS Plus Essential subscribers get 3 free games, Payday 3, High on Life, and Pac-Man World Repack. As always, you can keep these games as long as you stay subscribed. Payday 3 is the only PS5 exclusive game this month. It's a co-op first-person shooter where you and your crew pull off high-stakes heists. You can go in loud or sneak around like pros. Every mission has different ways to get the job done. What do you think of this month's lineup? Are you excited about Sony focusing more on PS5 games, or do you think they should keep supporting PS4 for longer? Sony has filed a DMCA takedown of a fan-made Bloodborne 60 frames per second patch nearly 4 years after its release. Bloodborne is a beloved From Software action RPG that's only officially available on PS4, running at a frame rate of 30 FPS. In 2020, Lance McDonald revealed a 60 frames per second patch for Bloodborne that he was working on, and it got a wide release on February 21st, 2021. While players needed to go through extra steps, like jailbreaking their PS4 to access this patch's enhancements, it quickly gained notoriety in lieu of an official enhanced PC and PS5 enhanced port of Bloodborne by Sony. Sony let this fan-made patch be for around 4 years, but it's now no longer available. McDonald took to X and revealed that he complied with a Sony request to remove any links to their 60 FPS Bloodborne patch. This makes the process of finding and downloading the 60 FPS Bloodborne patch significantly more difficult than it was before. It's unclear why Sony's legal action against this 60 FPS patch was so belated. While many fans, including Kai Cenat, have requested Bloodborne ports of PC and PS5, Sony has not publicly announced any plan to do so. It recently toyed with fans of Bloodborne by showing footage of the From Software title behind the statement, "It's about persistence," in its 30th anniversary celebratory video. If you want to play Bloodborne, the PS4 version of it is part of the PlayStation Plus extra game catalog. Sony's doubling down on its single-player games, which feels like a return to what the company does best. They just confirmed they'll keep leaning into these kinds of games, even as they branch out with live service games. Sadahiko Hayakawa, Sony's senior VP of Finance, said that Sony's plan is to keep focusing on what they know will be hits, big single-player titles based on their popular franchises. They'll also mix in live service games, though those carry a bit more risk. Hayakawa also mentioned that Sony expects a dip in sales and profits for the second half of the fiscal year compared to last year, mainly because of the massive success of Spider-Man 2 and Helldivers 2. But Sony's optimistic about what's coming up. They're making steady progress on new projects, and starting with Ghost of Yotei, the follow-up to Ghost of Tsushima, they plan to release at least one major single-player game every year, starting in 2025. Along with Ghost of Yotei, Death Stranding 2. On the Beach is also set for a 2025 release, so we can expect some pretty big PS5 titles next year. And Sony's not just focusing on the long term, they want a big, single-player game for the holiday season every year. This year, it's a bit unclear if that title will be be LEGO Horizon Adventures, which has both solo and co-op play, but in any case, it's good to see Sony staying true to its roots with strong single-player games. Yeah, this whole thing with Xbox maybe going full multi-platform is kinda wild. Like Fable on PS5 and Switch 2, that's not just a small shift, that's a massive change. And if Starfield is really getting a PS5 version after all that only on Xbox marketing, man, Xbox fans are gonna be heated. We all know Microsoft's been hinting at this for a while, especially with Phil Spencer basically admitting that exclusives don't work for them. But to see something like Fable, one of the biggest Xbox franchises, go multi-platform right out the gate, that's a whole new level. Honestly, at this point, what even is Xbox anymore? If you can get their games on PlayStation and Switch too, why would anyone buy an Xbox console? Like, sure, they'll probably keep some exclusives for now, but it really feels like they're slowly shifting to being more of a Game Pass-driven publisher than a traditional console maker. The Xbox Series S debate is still going strong, huh? Some people swear it's a genius move, while others say it's holding next-gen gaming back. Like, yeah, it's way cheaper than the PS5 or Series X, and for $299, it's a solid entry point. If a game is optimized, well, it can still hit 60 or even 120 FPS at 1080p, but that's the catch. If it's optimized well, we've seen devs struggle with it. Baldur's Gate 3 got delayed. Black Myth: Wukong had issues. The main problem? That 10 gigabytes of RAM compared to the 16 gigabytes on Series X and PS5. Microsoft requires all games to run on both consoles, so devs have to make it work. Some say that's holding back next-gen games. Phil Spencer, though, he says it's actually a strength. He compared it to handheld gaming PCs, like the Steam Deck, saying modern engines are built to scale across different hardware. Maybe this is all just setting up for a future Xbox handheld. Who knows? But the real question is, what's next for Xbox hardware? Spencer wants Xbox to stand out through hardware innovation instead of just exclusives. But let's be real, Xbox's biggest selling point has always been value. Game Pass, cross-play with PC, backward compatibility. So what's their next move? Do they try to undercut PlayStation 6 like they did with the 360? Do they finally drop the Xbox Live Gold paywall? Or do they take a wild leap and drop some crazy new hardware nobody saw coming?
I found you by the side of the road, in the middle of nowhere. Was there an accident? Did someone try to hurt you? Is that a scar? Is that recent?
Have you noticed how video game adaptations are everywhere these days? Like Sonic the Hedgehog, Fallout, and now Beyond Two Souls? Yeah, apparently they're turning that Quantic Dream game into a TV series. But here's the kicker. Elliot Page's production company, Pageboy Productions, snagged the rights to make it. Wild, right? Elliot actually starred in the game alongside Willem Dafoe, and he said filming it was one of the most challenging but rewarding experiences of his career. He's super passionate about the story's emotional depth and wants to bring something fresh to the characters while staying true to the game. And get this, David Cage, the writer and director of the game, is totally on board. He said Elliot's performance in the game blew him away, and he can't imagine anyone else bringing that same energy to the TV adaptation. It's still early days, but it sounds like they're really trying to honor the game's legacy while exploring new angles. Like, they're diving into how split-second decisions can change lives, which is such a core part of the story. I mean, Beyond Two Souls already has such a dedicated fan base, so there's a lot of pressure to get it right. Dragon Age: The Veilguard.
Mara Namra Benarie Vala Attachbar Tarost Asitarala Juto
Junasi Bishida.
This year kicked off with the announcement that the game's director, Kine Bush, was leaving the studio to pursue another opportunity. Right after that, EA finally gave some insight into how well the Veilguard sold. And, yeah, it wasn't great. EA reported that the game had engaged just 1.5 million players since launch. And that number? It's not all sales. That includes people who played it on EA's subscription service, some of whom were just using the 5-hour free trial. So yeah, for a major legacy franchise that was in development for nearly a decade, After Inquisition won multiple Game of the Year awards in 2014, that's bad. This is BioWare we're talking about, one of the most legendary RPG studios of all time. And EA says the Veilguard fell short of expectations by 50%. That's not the kind of result CEO Andrew Wilson and his exec buddies are just gonna let slide. So last week, I said we might see some changes at BioWare because of this. And, well, sure enough, it happened. Yesterday, BioWare studio boss Gary McKay uploaded a very carefully worded blog post. He said BioWare is now shifting its focus to the next Mass Effect game. And here's what he had to say about how they're restructuring the studio. Given this stage of development, we don't require support from the full studio. We have incredible talent here at BioWare, and we have worked diligently over the past few months to match many of our colleagues with other teams at EA that had open roles and that were a strong fit. Today's news will see BioWare become a more agile, focused studio that produces unforgettable RPGs. We appreciate your support as we build a new future for BioWare. Now, there's a lot to read between the lines here. First off, BioWare is being downsized. This was a studio that used to juggle multiple projects, but now it's looking like they'll only be working on one game at a time. That's a real loss, because once upon a time, you could imagine BioWare keeping both Dragon Age and Mass Effect alive at the same time, or maybe working on a new IP alongside Mass Effect, but that no longer seems to be in the cards. EA is clearly de-risking their investment in BioWare. Second, this blog post makes it very clear that the next Mass Effect game is not ready for full production. Otherwise, Dragon Age team members could have just been moved over. This game was announced 4 years ago, and it's still stuck in pre-production. Now, it's not quite as bad as Todd Howard flashing an Elder Scrolls 6 logo at us back in 2018, but it's up there. Let's talk about Microsoft's so-called Xbox handheld plans. Yeah, they'll call it an Xbox, but really, it's just going to run Windows. Microsoft is done with Xbox as a dedicated console. They're turning it into a brand name like Surface. And honestly, I don't think this move will work. They've already lost the console wars, and now PC gamers are getting fed up with Windows too, especially for gaming. Meanwhile, there's a new player in the mix that could shake up the entire industry and maybe even put some heat on Sony and PlayStation: SteamOS. Between the Steam Deck, Steam Deck 2, and rumors of a SteamBox, Valve is quietly building something big. The Steam Deck has been the biggest story in PC gaming in recent years. It's a low-power, portable, and affordable device that has excited gamers everywhere. It's even inspired a wave of imitators like the Asus ROG Ally and Lenovo Legion Go. But here's the thing. All of those other handhelds rely on Windows, and Windows just doesn't work well on a handheld device. Why Windows? Struggles in gaming. Handheld PCs running Windows are a mess. The interface isn't designed for small screens. It wastes hardware resources, and companies like Asus or Lenovo don't have the software expertise to fix these issues. Even on desktops, Windows has been struggling. The transition from Windows 10 to Windows 11 has been rough. Gamers constantly complain about forced updates, random bugs, and an interface that feels like it's designed for productivity, not gaming. This is where SteamOS comes in and changes the game. Valve designed SteamOS specifically for gaming. It's a Linux-based operating system that uses Proton to make most Windows games run with minimal issues. The Steam Deck runs on SteamOS, and gamers love it because it feels tailored to their needs, unlike Windows, which tries to do everything and ends up being bloated. And it's not stopping there. Lenovo's second-gen Legion Go S will run SteamOS, and other manufacturers like Asus are rumored to be following suit. Valve is even planning to release a downloadable version of SteamOS in 2025, letting tech-savvy gamers install it on custom PCs. SteamOS is shaping up to be the Android of gaming. It's free for manufacturers, works with any hardware, and is optimized for gaming performance. If Valve plays this right, SteamOS could become the default operating system for gaming laptops, desktops, and handhelds, just like Android dominates smartphones. Microsoft should be worried. Windows has always been the king of PC gaming, but SteamOS is a serious contender. It's lightweight, gaming-focused, and doesn't have Windows baggage. Sony isn't immune either. While PlayStation has the edge in exclusives and console performance, SteamOS-powered devices could offer gamers something similar to a console experience, but with access to their entire Steam library. If Valve nails the pricing and performance on future Steam Decks or Steam Boxes, it could tempt gamers away from both Xbox and PlayStation ecosystems. SteamOS isn't just another Linux distro, it's a real game changer. It's for gamers who are tired of Windows flaws and want something streamlined and efficient. Sure, it won't replace Windows overnight, but it's a sign that the gaming landscape is shifting. As Microsoft pivots Xbox into a Game Pass-driven brand and Sony leans heavily on exclusives, Valve is quietly laying the groundwork for something completely new. And both companies should be paying attention because this could change everything.